Hello, I'd like to speak to you today about costing and pricing your products. If you're a creative entrepreneur and you're making and selling wonderful products, then this might be the right course for you. I know many creative entrepreneurs who are out there trying to grow businesses who are making wonderful products and selling them to very happy customers for money, yet at the end of every month they come up just short of what they need to cover all of their overheads. Very often, the root of the problem actually lies in an incomplete understanding of how you should be costing and pricing your products. When I speak to entrepreneurs out there are a lot of different ways of tackling it. Some people found a formula somewhere that they're using. Other people are asking the market what they feel is a fair price for their products. Some people have sat and broken down their products into all the different components to work out exactly what it costs them before they start. All of these are great ways of working. They're all wonderful starting points. And in our course, we unpack it a little bit further to actually dig into those things that you maybe didn't think about when you were putting it all together. And it's those things, those places where the revenue and the profits in your business are slowly filtering out and affecting your future financial sustainability. The costing and pricing course is essential. I believe it's the most important course you can actually sign up for this year, because as soon as you implement what you have learned, you will begin to make more money. So if you are interested in this course, please sign up today. You can sign up anytime when you're ready. You don't have to start on any particular day. When you're ready to start getting into the numbers in your business, we're ready to start looking at them with you. So please contact Bonnie today if you'd like to sign up at info@dyeandprints.co.za. That's info@dyeandprints.co.za. I look forward to helping you to make more money in your business. Challenges that makers face when making their products and trying to price them. Many makers just don't know where to start. I know for myself that certainly was the case. When I started making things, I just kind of looked at how much they cost me to make, put a thumbsuck amount on top of that seemed to be enough to pay my bills, and went ahead. It was not a great way to cost and price my products. I'm actually quite surprised when I go out there and meet entrepreneurs, how many of them have run businesses for many, many, many years without really getting to the bottom of how they cost and price their products. It seems to be a challenge that the longer people let it go, the more embarrassed they are to say anything. I know that certainly was the case for me. I would get into a social situation where I'd realize that I was way out of my depth, so I would just keep quiet rather than admit that I really didn't know how to cost and price my products. If I had a more firm idea of how I should be doing it sooner, I would have probably made a whole lot more sales. I shudder to think how many people asked me for prices along the way, and I said to them, just hold on, I just have to go and work out how much this is going to cost me. If I could have just given them a direct answer on the spot, I would have made a lot more sales in the early years. The undercutting of prices by competitors is also a real threat to the economic survival of entrepreneurs around the world. When I go onto international forums, particularly the sites where they're selling tie-dye t-shirts and that kind of thing, there's a huge kind of movement of people who seem to be selling their stuff very, very cheap, which makes it very difficult for anybody else to be competitive in the market. And what inevitably happens is that these people who sell their products at such a low price are not sustainable, so they very quickly disappear out of the marketplace altogether, leaving those with more realistic pricing to struggle on. So it really doesn't actually serve anybody in the market, either the customers or you as a trader, to sell the products too cheaply, because you're actually affecting the sustainability of the industry as a whole for all of the players involved. Undercutting pricing, selling something for a little bit cheaper than the guy next door just to get a better price is never ever a great strategy. How do you include your overhead, and how do you even work it out? Well, the easiest way is to look at what debit orders go off at the end of the month. That normally tells you what your overhead is. It can give you quite a good thumbsuck figure to know where you stand. And your overhead includes things like rent, electricity, travel and transport, fuel costs, communication costs, marketing costs, all of those kinds of things that you spend money on inevitably in order to get your product out there. So all of those things need to be listed. Write them all down, everything that you spend money on every month, and make a tally of your total costs of running your business. And that's the number you're going to work on. It doesn't have to be exactly 100% accurate, but it will give you a good ballpark figure to work on. And if you have an overhead of 20,000 Rand a month and you're only selling 20 products a month, if you're not charging 1,000 Rand a product, then you're running your business at a loss. So it helps to know what your overhead is and relative to the number of products that you're selling, so that you can have some sort of an idea of where you're running. If you know that you need to sell 100 products at 100 Rand each to make your overhead, then it helps you to meet your daily targets, your daily sales targets, and to know whether you're running ahead or behind through the course of the month. So go and work out and get back to us with your feedback. Good luck with this week's homework. Now, the part that most entrepreneurs find the most difficult is actually working out how much to charge for time. And the theories differ. I personally believe that you should be charging for your time, whatever you need to live. Because if what you're charging for your time is not connected directly to what you need to live, you're going to have a very hard time making up the difference some other way. I think it's because a lot of entrepreneurs don't connect these two things that we have so many challenges. I know in my early stages, I would just make products and sell them, and then if there was a space between what I was making and what I needed to live, I would try to sell more products. But that strategy is not sustainable, especially when you find yourself now suddenly working very, very long hours. You can sell more stuff, and you're just making ends meet, but you're extremely exhausted by the end of the process. And it's not a smart way to work. So it's actually better to work out what you should be charging for your products, charge a realistic price, and then take it from there. And that price does need to be connected to what you need to live. It's not connected to quality of work. It's not, unfortunately, not connected to quality of work. It's connected to your daily needs and what you need to live. So the way I work out my hourly rate is I say, okay, how much do I need to live in a month? I then work out how many productive days I have in the month, and that needs to be a realistic figure. How many days are you really productive in a month? And then of those days, how many hours are you able to be truly productive? So using that sum, you'll work out an hourly rate, and that is what you should apply to your products, and work out how many hours it takes you to make that thing, so that price is relative to the time that you spend on the product. So go ahead and work out what your time is worth, write that all down, and send it back to us for some feedback. Good luck. And how do you work it out if you have staff? Well, you first have to figure out how many productive days work you get out of that staff member. Then you have to judge more or less how many productive hours of work you get out of them in a day. And in that way, work out how many productive hours you get out of them a month. This will give you a number again to divide into their salary to figure out what they're actually costing you per hour. So you work out your staff cost the same way you work out your personal labor cost. And if it's you and a staff member working on that product, both of those costs must be included in the cost of your product. So far, you've covered the raw materials of your product, your wages, your staff wages, and your overhead. So we're done. Yes? No. What about profit. Is there any margin in that sum that you've just done that includes profit? No? How much profit should you be making? How much profit is it reasonable to make? How much can you mark your products up for profit in your particular industry? This very often is the hardest part for any entrepreneur to tackle, especially because this part of the costing and pricing talks directly to self-worth. Many entrepreneurs are happy just to cover their bills and get to the end of the month. But if you don't have profits, how will you grow your business? If there is no profit in your business, how will you survive when fortunes turn? If there's no profit in your business, how do you come up with new things? How do you come up with new products for your customers that they'll enjoy? Product development costs money. So if there is no profit in your business, what's the point? Wow, that was a tough one, wasn't it? Profit. Oh, did you manage to even put a number in there on your costing and pricing? The first time I did this exercise, I collapsed at that point and gave it all up. And over the years, I have slowly learned how to work in those profit margins so that I'm comfortable with them and so that my customers are too. Because it's a delicate balance between what the market can sustain and what it will pay, and what you need to make. So you can't just keep adding profit and hope for the best, because at some point people stop buying. So it's kind of a balancing act, and you have to kind of test the market a little bit there and back and find your own personal happy spot for your own personal industry. Then, of course, there's tax. If you run a legal business and it's a legal entity and you're turning over enough cash to be in the tax system, you have to add your country's national tax on top of your pricing. So always remember to include that. It's a legal requirement, and it goes on right at the end. So add your tax so that you don't get into trouble with your government. I mentioned discounts earlier, and we haven't included them anywhere in our numbers yet. So they're a very real thing. Our customers expect them of us, and it's a great thing to be able to give them and offer them. So when I first started in business, I would try to be very fair about my pricing and keep it as low as possible for my customers. And then it meant that when they asked me for a discount, I was under a great deal of pressure, because I knew that if I gave them the discount that they wanted, I would be running my business at an unsustainable level. So one day when I was trading at the flea market, I thought, oh, the hell with it. I'm just going to put all of my t-shirts up by 10%. It was frightening. I went out the following week convinced that nobody was going to buy anything from me. One or two people noticed and complained, and business carried on as usual. What I found in the long term was that when people came in and asked me for a discount, I could say to them in a very reasonable fashion, absolutely, I'll give you 10%. Most people are totally happy with a 10% discount. Those who didn't ask, I made 10% profit. And suddenly found my business growing. I was able to grow my stock holding. I was able to go and buy more stock with it. And it was a great thing in the business. The customers didn't seem to mind. And those who asked for discounts now walked out happy instead of irate with me because we'd had a showdown because I was refused to budge. So think about putting in discount margins. I put in a 10% discount margin on top of my prices so that I can be generous and discount. It also gives you a chance to offer discounts at times when you need a sale. So if you're a little bit cash strapped and you need to get money going in the business, you can always go out there and offer those customers that 10% discount to try to encourage them to buy in times when they would normally be a bit tight-fisted with their cash. So that discount margin can be very useful. Put it in there. I encourage you to have the courage to put it in there. You won't be sorry. Okay, so we've included raw materials, we've looked at wages, we've looked at salaries, we've looked at overheads, we've looked at profits. It must all be in. No, it's not. What do you do when shit happens? Have you got any plan when things go wrong? When I used to mass produce for the fashion industry, I would always be quite optimistic about how long it would take me to do a job. And historically, I learned that I was anywhere between 30 and 60% out on my estimates of how long any particular job was going to take me. One epic job, I quoted a customer based on a 4-day timeline, and it took me 4 weeks of constant work to deliver the project that I had promised. There was no way I had made allowances for that in my costing and pricing exercise, and the extra 3 weeks of work that I put into that job was a loss, a financial loss in the business, because I was unable to go out and deliver anything for any of my other customers. So maybe you're doing that in your business. You need to become aware. And maybe you can work it out. Look back, if you've had a business that's existing, that's been running for a while, maybe there's something that, you always kind of are optimistic about and never really write about. Go and find that thing. For me, it was, how long will it take? And be realistic about that when you cost and price your products. If you know that you normally give yourself too little time, then work in a margin of 30 to 60% that will protect you when you're wrong. It's always easier to surprise a client and deliver early on deadline than to disappoint them and say to them, sorry, it's going to take another 3 weeks. So shit happening is worth talking about a little bit more because it happens far too frequently, and we need some contingencies in place for when that happens. So I like to write down a worst case scenario list. It helps me to have a sense of realism about what I'm working with. So sit down when you start any job and write down what is the worst possible thing that could go wrong in this job, and price for that so that you have got some fat in case things go wrong. I know it sounds terrible, but you've got to do it. You've got to do it because when things do go wrong, where does the difference come from? So in my case, in that job that took 4 weeks longer, I had a revenue gap where I just didn't have money coming in. And the implications were that at the end of the month, I had to please explain to my landlord why I couldn't pay my rent. I was under some stress and duress because my car repayments were behind, and all of that emotional strain had a backlash on my nearest and dearest, my family, my friends, and all of the people who were supporting the tears and drama back end. And it's simply not fair to expose your support system to that kind of stress on a monthly basis just because you botched your costing and pricing. Costing and pricing. I was going to edit that video and then I thought I should leave it in because by now you're probably feeling that way too. I know I certainly was by this part of the course. And I'd like to talk about it for a little bit also, just so that you can be prepared and have a little bit of support and realize that it really is that bad. If you're feeling dire right now, it really is that bad. When I first went through this exercise with my costing and pricing and took a long, hard look at it, I spent days in deep, deep depression, coming to terms with the torture that I had put myself through for the first decade of being an entrepreneur. The self punishment that we endure because we perpetuate a system that doesn't serve us. So yes, you very likely are feeling quite awful at this part of the course. I'm aware that you're feeling awful. I'm there with you, and know that this is the worst of it. If you can get through this and get through to the other side, you will be amazed at how your life will change, because you won't be punishing yourself with your own self-fulfilling prophecies of failure. So just get in there, work out these numbers, be courageous, add on margins for profits, do what you have to do to make the numbers real for your real solutions, and go out and sell your products at that price. As tough and as frightening as it seems to you now, it will be your long-term solution, and things will get better.